And that is a recording of us, only what you see on the screen. So we're not recording, we can't see you, we can't hear you, and we're not recording you. So don't worry about the PJs and don't worry about the lockdown here. A lot of people out there, Peter McPartin, as I said, Jackie Duggan is there, Frank from Mindmap is there, the great Ken Nugent of RT is there, MT from the Marketing Institute, we have friends from IAPI, we have friends from Havas Media, we have friends from Core Media, which I helped to found at the very outset. Neil Thompson's there, Lou McConkie is there, Breda Brown is there, Mary O'Leary is there, the great Sharon Plunkett is there, Sarah O'Doherty is there, and of course John Holland, who has one of the greatest advertising medias in the world, adtar.ie, he's there, Alan Kernan, Mark Lynch is there, so there's a whole lot of people there. And as I say to you, we were oversubscribed. Friends also from the UK, from London. I don't necessarily know you, but you're there. And friends from Malta as well, which is interesting. A place that I will definitely head if I can afford to after all this. At the moment, it looks more like Courtown. I'm Stuart Fogarty from Admatic, Adtech, AFAO'Meara, Advertising and Streamabout Video. I'm just here really to moderate the discussion and to try and keep it all going. As you can see, I'm in the advertising jungle here in our offices. We'll start with a round robin of what's going on, and then a discussion which is really based on your questions, and see if we can learn things from this. The whole idea here is to be positive. It's hard to be because things are tough out there, but to try and be positive and maybe to get some ideas and at least to start the conversation. So joining us first is Siobhan O'Connell. She was formerly a media and advertising journalist with the Irish Times and indeed with the Sunday Business Post, which is now just the Business Post. Interesting enough, we have Colm O'Reilly with us next week, Siobhan, who's the new CEO of the Business Post. He took over from Siobhan Lennon, who we all know and love, or we all know. Siobhan runs the great Business Plus magazine, Ireland's largest monthly circulating business magazine. It's just out, and that was 22 years ago. And can I just say as well, one of the ways we can support Irish advertising and one of the ways we can support Irish media is go out and buy a copy of Business Plus, apart from the fact that I'm in it, but go out and buy it and try and sell it out. And the same thing applies to the Irish Daily Mail, and the same thing applies to IMJ and Adworld.ie. Let's go and do that. So Siobhan is with us. In the other corner, we have Mr. Paul Henderson, who I think is joining us live from the West Wing, it looks like, Paul, of your Hollywood home. Hendo, our Paul Henderson, is the CEO of DMG Media. DMG Media being Daily Mail Group media, and also an awful lot of online assets. Rollercoaster.ie if you're thinking of having a baby, or if you just had a baby. Evoke.ie, which if you're into beauty and fashion, and I certainly am, is there as well. Also Extra.ie, which is news, and a thing called MCAST, which we don't talk about because it's a direct competitor of Streamabout. But Paul also, I know from his days in the Star and TV3 in 1922. In fact, Paul, Mrs. Pat Kiley, we hope will be joining us, who I know is a former colleague of yours. In the other corner, we have the great John McGee, who is known as Jack to his friends, so I call him John. He's the CEO of Irish Marketing Journal, IMJ, and Adworld.ie. And I would say to attendees that Adworld.ie, I think it's free, John. You should subscribe to it. It is the most sought out piece of communication. It goes out on a Friday. Everybody in the advertising business goes looking for it, and everybody in the advertising business reads it. It's a really, really important thing to do. And as I say, if it's free, you should subscribe to it. And IMJ and Adworld have very kindly supported and promoted and helped, as indeed of Business Plus, this webinar. You, the kind guests, you're all muted, so we can't hear you and we can't see you, so you don't have to worry about your lockdown hair. But you can watch and hopefully listen and hopefully find something useful. We'll do a poll at the very end of this. If the results are any good, I'll share them with you. And in true Irish fashion with research, if they're no good, I won't. So let's firstly, if we can, let's go to Siobhan. So Siobhan, what's the current state of play, and how are we all doing?
Well, we're doing good. We're doing good. Business Plus has just published our 92-page May issue. We delayed publication of the issue by 3 weeks, and that was because the issue was due to have our annual in-depth report on the commercial law sector, and obviously the managing partners were a little bit busy, having had to suddenly deal with remote working and whatnot, so our journalists weren't able to get the insights from them as quickly as we normally would, but it all worked out well, and the issue was published last week. Our other challenge was that we would have regular sales agreements with hotels and with airlines. So those channels aren't available to us at the moment. So to compensate, we produced our first ever digital replica edition of the magazine, and that has gone down very well. Now, moving forward then, our business model centers very much on in-depth sector surveys. So that will be a bit of a challenge for us going forward. For example, in our upcoming June issue, we would have been planning to do our in-depth piece on the PR sector. Now, obviously, there's not a lot happening in PR at the moment, and things are a bit quiet. And so we've had to postpone that to later in the year, but we will do it later in the year when everything is a little bit more back to normal. But what we have been very successful at is in picking up advertising messaging from government, from state agencies who have been extraordinarily supportive of media, of our media, and I can speak for myself. They're very anxious to get out the message to businesses how and what are the aids that are available. So all things being equal, we've got a good issue. We're working on our June issue. It's one day at a time, and you're just trying to keep moving forward.
I saw, Siobhan, in the UK government is spending 35 million sterling on what is exclusively a print campaign, not radio, not TV, not outdoor, just print. So that's the sort of thing that's what you were saying about government agencies supporting?
I think, I mean, later on we'll be able to talk specifically maybe about more tangible business aids the government could be giving to media. But I mean, certainly I would say my experience when I'm dealing with the ad agencies for the Government of Ireland, for example, they're basically being told, if someone asks for it, give it to them. You know, so they are being very supportive of media with their messaging.
Okay. So, Paul, how are things going there? Tell us about the Daily Mail and your online assets, and also about your £1 million business incentive.
Yeah, just to touch on the first thing, the reason we're doing this, and I am actually speaking to you from the DMG boardroom. The way we're operating at the moment is we've got 6 people in the office. As an essential service, as journalism is, you know, we've obviously got 20 people out there on the information front line, down the Dáil, down Department of Health, etc., and 100 people, 110 people operating from home. This is a people business, you know. You touched on there with your line about community, Stuart, at the start, and it's very important to remember that, and it is really very important to remember to look after each other at times like this. We don't have assets, we don't have big machines. All we have in this industry are people, and people are our only assets and our strongest assets. You know, I'm thankful today that my 136 guys are all safe, they're all well. Some of them have lost family members, which is very sad, and our prayers go out to them. And some of us have been touched by this horrible disease, which is obviously affecting business. We'll talk about that now in a second. But really, the reason we're all here today, having to do this in this format, and it's a great initiative as well, by the way, is because this horrible thing that has no control for any of us except to disrupt everything. And it is important just to remember that the humanity behind this, and the stories behind this, and the actual people behind this are really what's important at the end of the day. You've been through recessions before and different things, as we all have. Money comes back. Money will come back. Sometimes it's slow, sometimes it's fast. But during situations like this, when things are just a little bit scary, a little bit uncertain, when you really can't see the light at the end of the tunnel, you've got to remember, you know, that the things that we don't really value all that much, you know, will be there in the end anyway. And the valuable things are each other, our families, our friends, and our colleagues, you know. So I'm delighted that all my guys are safe, and that's our first priority, is keeping them safe. What we're noticing in our business are lots of strange things kind of happening, and some good things as well. I'll give you one example: the newspaper market. So pre the COVID kind of problem, when the information was starting to develop, pretty much all publishing, I think you'll find this from our former competitors, now colleagues around town, because we're all in this together, is that newspaper sales in general starts to experience something that hadn't happened in a few years, a little bit of an up curve. When there were large, really important messages from the government, it was a large increase, you know, pretty much across the board. After that, And as soon as the country was locked down by NT shock, sales plummeted. You're talking somewhere between 15 and 25%. And that, for that week, was pretty much people getting used to their new circumstances, being a little bit scared, trapped at home. And after that, people started to come back out again. We all start to move within our 2 kilometers. A great thing happened during part of that process was that we all valued those little guys that we've been walking past all of our lives in a hurry to get to Dundrum town centres, you know, shopping online, big fancy shops, you know. So Tom and Mary at the top of your street, you know, Kelly's newsagents, Kelly's family store, they're the people that had the bread, the milk, the baby powder, you know, so, and the newspapers and the magazines. They're the people that all of a sudden were really, really important in your life. And that's where we saw a return in terms of sales. So much so that the daily newspaper market, certainly for ourselves, is down, you know, 4 or 5%, which is pretty much better than it was going into this crisis. The Saturday and Sunday market have stabilized completely. It's certainly in our case, I know from 1 or 2 people I've been talking to as well, the Saturday and Sunday market look like they're at a pre-COVID level. Now, that's an astonishing kind of position to be in for any kind of market. It's important to remember it as well. Like my heart goes out to, you know, like, you know, Simon across the road here in the outdoor business, people, we've got friends in the cinema business, probably online here at the moment, people in the advertising business in the airport, you know, where you've got 0 revenue streams coming in. That's an awful position to be in. It really is an awful position to be in. We're in that lucky position where we've got a large 7-figure sum coming in the door on a regular basis, which is people actually buying for our products, paying for content. And if you think about what's happening in people's lives at the moment as well, they've got so much time on their hands. They're really getting to love their newspapers again. I'll talk about digital in a second, because they're spending so much time with their newspapers, all newspapers and magazines, you know, it's filling a big part of the day in terms of being able to dedicate some time and appreciate the written words, the professionally written words, career professional journalists who go up every day, you know, get stories, track down stories, and as we call it in the trade, stand them up. You know, if there's one thing that fuels fear, you know, animosity, hatred, etc., it's that false information, and not in the Trump sense. You know, we do enough of it in this country, you know, through various different elements and social media, you know, that this is the era when large, well-established broadcasters, publishers, radio stations have really come into their own, because we're providing really, really good, factual Irish news for an Irish audience. Interesting enough, so if we go into the digital part of our business, we've seen extraordinary growth across all 4 sites. Mail Online, which is a huge international phenomenon, Extra.ie is pretty much, in terms of the youngest brand, media brand that's out there at the moment. This is probably a fast forward us for a year in terms of the audience. It does 2.2 million now, and that's happened over the last kind of few months. Evoke does 1 million women every month. Rollercoaster is an anomaly, because somebody forgot to tell mums and babies that was a crisis, so that's just ticking along on its own, you know, revenue-wise and audience-wise. Somebody just forgot to tell the babies that there was a problem, so the babies and the mums are just kind of ticking along on their own. Interesting, we did a bit of analysis, I mentioned it to you during the week, in terms of the total news output. And you're talking about across about maybe 55 million pages across our sites. The same thing has happened in terms of the appetite for news, in terms of crisis news, let's call it COVID news, where it started to peak. For the last 3.5 weeks, it has flatlined and the audiences have expanded. Our percentage of consumption of bad news, hard news, the announcements from the Department of Health at the end of every single day is pretty much at an all-time low. And it's a pretty good representative of Irish people across the board in terms of that percentage of total news consumption across all of our sites. 56 million odd pages is at an all-time low at this stage of the game. There is COVID fatigue certainly settling in, and people are looking for other information. The other really interesting thing that's happening as well, our Irish audience is looking back at Ireland from abroad. I'm assuming that they are. We're doing some survey stuff on this. So we've seen huge expansion in Australia, the UK, and America. Our working hypothesis at the moment is that people looking at home to see what's happening if mum and dad are still there, my brothers and sisters are still there, my friends are still there. So people looking back into Ireland from abroad to Irish news sources like ourselves to see what's happening on the ground. While you might be camped up in a New York apartment, what's happening in Dublin, Carlow, Kilkenny, whatever happens to be. So all of that together, the advertising market, I'm sure we'll talk to you about in a second, you know, so I've got some data here as well we can come back on, but pretty much from what we've seen so far, the Irish markets tend to be doing a lot better than the UK. our nearest neighbour. There's some stability coming back into the CPM rates in terms of the open X exchanges and stuff like that. That's running programmatic. So we probably hit the bottom and on the way up from there in terms of the actual yield that's possible out there. Overall, things could be worse, so they could be worse. It's not great, but it's not terrible either. It could be a lot worse.
Paul, you would have a better insight on the UK market. So just very briefly, how do you see it? Is it a similar situation across the water, or how are things over there? Do you know?
The market data from our own guys and from their intel over there, so I'm relying on that. The ad market in the UK is 60% down across the board in terms of print, and in the mid 70s in terms of everything else. The print sales, the newspaper sales market is consistently in the 20% for the daily market and 13% for the Sunday market.
Okay.
So there seems to be a couple of factors into that in terms of less mobility, I suppose, in the population at large as well. And obviously they've been hit extraordinarily hard.
All right, Jack. The advertising business is, according to all the press releases, going onwards and upwards. How are things really at the coalface?
We're unique, I suppose, with IMJ and Adworld in that our clients and our readers are marketers, news publishers like DMG Media, the Irish Times, the Independent, but also broadcasters, PR agencies. So we, from talking to clients, there's a mixture of kind of, I suppose they've gone through over the last 6-7 weeks, the 5 stages of grief, anger and despair, and now they're at acceptance, the acceptance stage, and it's a question of moving on from there and what the new normal might look like. And I don't think anybody really has identified what the new normal is like. There's still a lot of, I suppose, an element of fear there, and it's the fear of the unknown and the uncertainty, and that has a paralyzing effect. Now we can see some brands are still very active out there in the marketplace. And if you look at, for example, the retail trade, I mean, that's, according to the latest Nielsen and Kantar figures, retail is booming. The grocery end of it, and sales are up, single-digit figures over this time last year, and that's not spread across all categories, but in certain categories, household essentials, and so people are staying at home, eating a lot more. You can see that in on TV at night and newspapers. You see a lot more retail advertising. I mean, if you look at Super Value now, is out there doing a great job at the moment in terms of promoting itself. The Aldi's and the Lidl are also doing well. So there's a lot. So if you look at the FMCG brands like P&G and Unilever, who are between them are the 2 biggest advertisers in the world, they haven't reined in their spending yet. As such, they're focusing very much on certain categories. But then you look at, say, someone like Coca-Cola, which also spends billions every year in advertising, and it has definitely reined in. It's because pubs, leisure venues are closed and stuff like that. So it has pulled. You look at car manufacturers, they're not selling any cars at the moment, but they would probably ramp up again towards September, October. Pharma companies doing well, and again focusing on specific product lines. Fast food will, pretty much non-existent at the moment, but I gather from talking to some of the agencies, they'll be back before the end of September. So I think in agency land, there's a lot of hope that campaigns will start to come back into the market. Those brands that have been dark for the last kind of 8-10 weeks will start to come back, from around August, September, October onwards. And, hopefully by Christmas, there will be, the market will have regained some of lost territory. In terms of media, media is obviously challenged, and as Paul and Siobhan said, every media company is different, and they all have their own kind of unique challenges and opportunities. For us, as I said, we're predominantly relying on, our client base as marketers, media companies, etc. So we're very much at the coalface of what's going on in the industry at the moment. So, you know, we've seen huge levels of engagement online on our digital offering. So when you mentioned our Friday e-zine, and, you know, yes, we've over whatever 10,000 subscribers now to that every week, and we can track all of that, which is great. That's the beauty of digital. But over on a more general level, since February, our online traffic has gone up by about 68, 70%, which again is, you know, phenomenal for us. You know, it's a very niche industry that we're operating in, and it's not, you know, it's very much within B2B. It's very, very niche. So, you know, looking at that, I mean, we had plans to launch a couple of new digital products in 2021. We've now fast-tracked them, 2 new websites, which we'll be launching in the next 8 weeks. So everything, and I hate using this word, everything that we've been doing is pivoting towards digital. Now, we've been pivoting towards digital since 2005, but, and you know, we were one of the first in the marketplace to introduce a digital version of IMJ back in 1997. So, you know, but we're doubling down on the digital space. We'll still always have IMJ in print. You know, Siobhan says people will still like print magazines, and you know, we have to be there to serve that need. But we also have to be in the digital space in a big way, and basically that's what we're trying to do. And you know, certainly, I mean, if I was looking at the figures from, you know, last week alone on our digital, our weekly e-zine, you know, the levels of engagement again on that particular product, that particular issue, were way through the roof. You know, looking at the stats in terms of where people were accessing, you know, it's 67% was mobile. You know, so that tells us that we have to try and refine our product to, you know, tailor it to the mobile experience. So little things like that we're using this time wisely to kind of, I suppose, ramp up what, you know, we're doing in the digital space. And, you know, when things go back to normal, hopefully the habits that people have developed over the last, you know, 6-7 weeks, some of them will stick, and, you know, some of them may not. But, you know, I think if you behavioral scientists will tell you that it takes, 60-70 days to form a habit. And, you know, we're at that stage now. So some of the habits that we've developed as consumers of media, as consumers in general, I think will probably stick. And we'll go into the new normal, whatever that may look like, you know, with different kind of values. We will have different outlook in life. But, you know, one of the main things that I think, you know, we tend to forget about all of what's going on, you know, we're all kind of in this little bubble, you know. Unfortunately, advertising and marketing do not operate in a bubble. So if you look at the macroeconomic circumstances around the world, not just in Ireland, I mean, obviously we're well aware this is a serious, heading in for a serious depression probably. And, you know, there's emerging geopolitical tensions which could dictate, you know, the flow of trade globally. There's a whole range of issues there, you know, that trickle down and can have a huge impact on consumer sentiment. And, you know, we all want, in our industry, we want consumer sentiment to be as buoyant as possible, because then they go out and spend and buy products, and brands will advertise and whatever. You know, so we need to see some sort of a rebound in consumer sentiment. And I think, you know, the levers that governments, not just the Irish government, but, you know, at EU level, the levers, the financial or the fiscal levers that they have need to be, you know, put into action or cranked up in terms of rebooting the world economy. And only then, I think, you know, when the economy is, be it globally or regionally, when the economy is rebooted, I think, you know, we'll start to see some lift off. So anyone looking for, you know, the prospect of a V-shaped recovery is, you know, clearly misguided, because that's not going to happen, I don't think. There will be a lot of, unfortunately, casualties along the way. And, you know, Martin Sorrell said there, you know, there will be of a Darwinian proportion. Yes. So, you know, and that's regrettable, you know, and that might, you know, force us to look at our industry in terms of, you know, I mean, there are probably too many radio stations, too many publishing companies, too much media. And the market, I don't think the market can sustain the number of companies, you know, that are in existence at the moment. I think there needs to be some sort of consolidation rationalization, but that can't happen until you change things like competition laws. You know, so if a company wants to go out and acquire another media company, or merge for that matter, you know, the process of doing that is very complicated and needs to go through the competition authority, the CPC, and it needs ultimately ministerial approval. You know, I think we need to streamline that. You know, competition law in Ireland is you know, rooted in the 60s and 70s. It doesn't take account of the digital landscape that we're operating in now, you know, with the likes of Facebook and Google, who are basically hoovering up, you know, the vast majority of digital ad spend. So, you know, I think one of the things that we need is probably, you know, a minister for media going forward, because at the end of the day, you know, the media industry plays a hugely important role. And as Paul pointed out, the importance of journalism, in good quality journalism, in informing people, has never been more important than it is now. I think, you know, the government, we have a minister for finance who I think probably gets that, and given that he is a former marketer himself and he understands the importance of advertising. You know, and let's be clear about something. Advertising funds the internet. Advertising funds, you know, a lot of the media industry here in Ireland. So if you follow the money, you know, i.e. advertising, yes, subscription revenue is still a big part of the equation, but advertising ultimately is a big part of it. And so I think we need a coordinated national approach to how media is funded, and that will require input from, you know, advertisers, I believe, as well. So when I say advertisers, you know, you know, advertisers, I do think have a role to play in this, because ultimately they control the purse strings. And there was a sense there last year that, you know, the whole issue of morality was, after the live streaming on Facebook of a massacre in New Zealand, the World Federation of Advertisers took it upon themselves to say, right, we're going to boycott Facebook because this is absolutely ridiculous. We have a moral obligation to fund credible news brands and full credible news organizations. I thought that was an interesting kind of twist. Now, whether that will be followed through, I don't know. But I do think all the stakeholders involved, and as I said, advertisers and media owners and agencies, I do think they all have a role to play in this. And, you know, media, as I said, is operating or is in a precarious position at the moment, and that's not good for society. It's not good for consumers, and we need to kind of finally, I suppose, nail this problem. We've been talking about it for a long time, so for a start, of a minister for media, and then perhaps a kind of a representative body for all the different organisations in Ireland. I mean, every organisation, you know, so you have the likes of IAPI, News Brands Ireland. You have, everyone looks after their own patch, which is fine, and you can understand that. But I think if they were to come under the umbrella of one kind of, you know, overarching kind of committee, and, you know, plot a future for media, plot a future for advertising, and get brands involved as well. I think that would be a starting point. I think, you know, we're not necessarily going to be starting from ground zero in the post-pandemic era, but I think with a new government coming in, I think lots of things are going to change. And now I think is the time to start thinking about these, to try to reimagine the industry, where everybody can survive and thrive, but also where consumers can be served well by, you know, having access to quality content and information. So where brands can, you know, feel safe in, you know, operating and or selling their advertising in trusted environments. You know, so the whole raft of issues there that I think we need to start as an industry collectively.
Yeah, and I absolutely agree with you. One thing I would say, and I know you'll be impressed because I was on a government Zoominar yesterday, and I think it was ISME who said that out of the £2 billion fund to support Irish SMEs, 17 million had been drawn down. And because of the application process, because it was going through banks, and they asked for like 5-year cash flows. I mean, which is beyond belief that you would ask for that in the first place, just on finance. And can I just to take your point, and indeed because Paul mentioned it as well, the whole issue around digital publishing, clearly, as Paul was saying, as you were saying, and indeed as Siobhan was saying, you've got this huge growth in digital publishing. So is digital publishing going to be the way to go? And is that a lesson? Again, can I just say something? And I know I said from a personal point of view here as well, Jack, about what you said about media buying and about the digital duopoly who we all hate, the Facebooks and the Googles. I can buy a Facebook ad now from my kitchen and be live in 5 minutes. I can't buy a spot on radio. I can't buy a spot on television. And I can't buy an old 10x4 in the Irish Times, which is what Admatic is set up to do. That the ease of advertising has to be part of it. But how, if there was a lesson in this, it seems to be that digital publishing might be the bit that right now is showing us some growth. Again, yesterday, 69%, that's 69% of Irish businesses will run out of cash in September. And my experience in this sector of talking to people, they have about 4 months. And that was including March. So that gets them into June and July. So is digital publishing an opportunity? Is it a way to go, Siobhan?
Well, it depends what you define as digital publishing. So you've got digital publishing, which is the page suite issue where you're producing replica magazines. Yes. That's certainly going to be part of our business supply channel going forward. But our firm view in Business Plus would be there is still a cohort of people out there who will always prefer the printed product, for sure. So that's not going to go away. That is still going to be there. But what is happening now is that this crisis has forced publishers to be more innovative in their digital supply distribution model than they previously, but perhaps they were thinking about doing 6 months' time, but they've had to bring forward those plans. So yes, that is an opportunity because it gets your product in front of more people, which is always a good thing. If you look then at what's happening on the Facebook and the Google advertising side of things, yeah, you know, they were producing cautious results in the last couple of days. Cautious, and that's before we saw what happens in April. So though the figures they were releasing 2 days ago don't include the month of April.
Correct.
I mean, I would say, you know, digital, print, radio, television, everything, any recovery in this country totally depends on how much the government is going to step up to the plate to assist companies. You know, the wage subsidy scheme is great. It's a great help. It expires in mid-June. So the only liquidity giveaway that the government has actually given to companies to date is a 3-month waiver on commercial rates. Everything else is loans. It's SMEs, companies having to bring on more debt in order to get through their crisis. Now, I would say everything is on hold until June when you talk about any sign of a recovery that might be coming. You're going to see a lot of businesses struggle with cash flow. And then they're going to have a choice. They're going to have to decide to borrow, or they're going to have to decide not to borrow. And if they don't borrow, then there's going to be a wave of liquidations coming down the tracks. And then that's going to depress sentiment across the economy for months and months and months. But I would say too, we have seen in the last 6-8 weeks so many creative and imaginative ways that policies that were not considered ever feasible have now become the norm. You look at the health service, you look at the wage subsidy scheme, you look at the pandemic unemployment payment. So I would be saying, wouldn't it be great if they could apply the same creativity and imagination to helping the media and advertising sector? There's a number of measures out there that government could put into place. The Association of Advertisers of Ireland have written again to Pascal Donoghue asking for the introduction of a tax credit, which is something that would be of a big help. The Sound and Vision Fund. So, you know, I speak for print media, and in my print media space, we're a small portion of the print media. And it would be very clear to me that print media is outside of the tent, if you like. It's outside of the official tent. And we're not the only ones. If I look at Virgin Media Television, which is doing a fantastic job night in, night out with its broadcasting and continues to do so through this pandemic. And they're outside the licensed fee tent as well, to a great extent. Radio's in the tent, okay? It's regulated by the BAI. And for that reason, last week, 10 days ago, Minister Richard Bruton was able to instruct the BAI to divert 2.5 million euro to independent radio stations. Now, I would say it's a real pity that there is no structure formally in place that can provide the same assistance to regional newspapers, national newspapers, periodicals, even specialist websites like thejournal.ie, which does an excellent job in producing great content. But we're all outside the official tent, if you like, and that is something, there is an opportunity now to change that and to make it a more inclusive landscape.
Got it. I wouldn't hold your breath on that, though.
Well,
that said,
optimistic, Stuart.
I know, but a bit of good news in that, in relation to the £350 payment that's due to end in the middle of June, as of my conversations yesterday, there is a good sense that is going to be extended. However, it's not sustainable. Government is saying they can't keep writing checks to everybody, to every sector. That's not sustainable. And when we come back, austerity is not going to be sustainable. So there's no way of recollecting that cash. Hendo, just in terms of digital publishing, because you've got a lot of experience there with Rollercoaster and Evoke and so on. Dara mentioned MCAST and Extra. Is that the future?
I've never, as you know, because I've spoken to you all about it and written about it quite a bit, I've never believed in digital first concepts as a way of approaching, we're consumer first, customer first, different consumers consume media in different ways. We have portfolio brands. We're the largest digital publisher on the islands at this stage. And as the largest digital publisher with a reach of 3.3, 3.5 million, whatever it is, as of just this morning, we would not be in the strong position we're in right now if I didn't have the income which has been generated by the newspaper parts of the business. And wouldn't have that income stability as well if all those brands weren't in different sectors, because not all the sectors are affected the same way. So a very diverse portfolio, with multiple income streams is the way that we chose to go, which is the way some of my competitors didn't go, several years ago. It was like the singularity of a brand, then forced down channels that just happened to be digital and then became mobile. So if you again, back to marketing 101, start with the consumer, work your way back up. That's the way we've approached that. So much so that we're even expanding that, and the next time I'm talking to you, I'll tell you about that. We're mid-acquisition at the moment as well in terms of something else we're adding to our portfolio. And again, it'll be in a different space to add to the strength of the portfolio. Back to something Siobhan touched on there. Government is capable. Our lack of official government, if you think about it at the moment, that we don't have a legally representative government at the moment. Hopefully we will with what's happening with Taoiseach, Micheál and the Greens. At the moment, we will have a representative body who is with a mandate to govern, which will get some of that legislation we're speaking about there as well through, because that's not obviously enforceable right now at the moment. But what has been shown during the crisis is that they can make changes. You can get through some of the red tape really quickly. You can make decisions. And the frustration, that we would have as members of news brands is that, yes, we don't have a representative, and I ain't a good word that Anne-Marie Lenihan has been trying to do with the government on our behalf. There's nobody to talk to. You get passed from Billy to Jack in terms of ministerial, because there is no ministerial responsibility for publishers. Juxtaposition to that, politicians couldn't be nicer at the moment. They're tripping over themselves to talk to us. 6 months ago, they're tripping over each other to go down to open, the latest .com down in Docklands, whatever the hell that happened to be, so flyingbybike.com, whatever the hell it happens to be, right now, because their messaging is so important to get to real Irish people who are relying on real Irish sources for information, and their voice is very important and their credibility is very important. Falling over themselves to talk to us right now, Whereas before now, I think part of hopefully what we're all seeing as part of all this is the reliance on each other, in terms of what we can do for each other, especially when things aren't so good, and the value in that, we put value in so many falsehoods in the past. Our value systems may be adjusting, and that has huge implications as well for consumers and going forward. In terms of what do we really want, and those channels we'll choose to get them through.
I think that's very true, Paul, but I also think that there's a great sense of community amongst media owners. Whether the radio, TV, press, or outdoor, and I know there is, especially with the BAI situation that was mentioned there, I know a lot of them collaborated on that, but there isn't the same sense of community amongst advertising practitioners, whether that's agencies or whether that's PR agencies. That needs to happen. There needs to be a sense of community. There needs to be a better sense of people getting together. Jack, just very briefly, just on digital publishing, do you want to say a few words about that? Because I'm conscious of time.
Listen, digital publishing is a very important part of any kind of publishing company's mix. I wouldn't be relying on it. And certainly, I don't think digital-only publishers will be retiring on the income they make anytime soon. And if you look yesterday, there was a report, and I'll be writing about this in the Sunday Independent next Sunday. There was a report from the ISBA in the UK which analysed programmatic traffic and the income derived from programmatic advertising. And as little as 50% of revenue was going to the publisher. So
51% in effect, 49% was going out on margin.
Yeah. So so publishers relying on digital advertising only, can forget about it. And you look at obviously the likes of Facebook and Google, and I hate bringing them up and constantly pointing them out as scapegoating them, but it's true. There's a reason why these two companies are probably the most successful companies in the world, because they've got that whole digital publishing, digital advertising nailed firmly down. And so I was talking to Siobhan there earlier about what's happening in other countries, and she mentioned Australia, where government is now forcing these digital giants to contribute towards media. I think that might be something that we could look at here. France are doing the same. So going back to digital, I thought, yes, you have to do it, of course, because you have to serve your readers, and as Paul says, your consumers, your customers. You have to serve them wherever they want to access you, whether that's in print or whether it's in digital. You have to be there. But if you're looking at making heaps of money from digital, forget about it.
Yeah, I do accept that, Jack. But in a sense, we also have to be careful here as media owners. I mean, and I said this for selfish reasons, because it's what Admatic does. We build media tech. For media owners, we need to compete with the digital duopoly as well. We can stop giving out about them and start being able to buy radio spots online and start being able to buy press ads online. I mean, it is as simple as that. But can I also ask you just very briefly, because I'm conscious of time, the other side of that digital publishing thing is really, because I know we've got PR agencies and ad agencies listening to us here, they should also be providing those services or look to that digital transformation that they've been telling clients about. Or do you agree with that?
Absolutely, yeah. And up until recently, two of the biggest words that strike fear into many SME owners is digital transformation, right? Yeah. And what that actually means for their business. And if you look at, over the last 6-7 weeks in terms of e-commerce sales and how brands are reacting, or whether it's restaurants now selling online, delivery, and I think a lot of brands will start to reassess what their relationship with. Now, obviously, the big brands have it nailed, and big companies have it, but even you might see some of the bigger companies going down the DTC, direct-to-consumer model. Like I know for Diageo, looking at that. Obviously, the P&Gs, the Unilevers have certain brands that fulfill the D2C model. So I think more and more companies will look to digital to see what they can sell online, see how they can interact with their customers online. And I was talking to somebody there in retail. They don't have an online presence, and I'm saying, well, why? You should. Look at Louis Copeland has been clearing up over the last couple of weeks. 40% sale online.
Absolutely.
And at a time when people are not, when shops are closed, people may be focusing on buying in groceries and like Tesco and Lidl, but Louis Copeland's are actually selling clothes literally off the shelves, but are doing it online.
Absolutely. And the other side of that too as well is that when you go DTC or direct to consumer, or buyer to seller, is you cut out the middleman's margin. So it's more lucrative. I was talking to a fellow who sells chickens, never mind agencies or middle people, but it actually becomes more lucrative. So it's more lucrative for the seller because they don't have to pay retailers margins or middlemen margins. I'm just conscious of time. Can I just kind of very quickly go around the table for two reasons? One is, when do we think is the return? And I know we know it's kind of middle August when pubs open and golf courses open, which nobody ever asked for ever. But when they all return, firstly from business point of view, when do we think business will get back, and then when do we think business will be ready for advertising? When will we get back to some sort of bounce through? And therefore, what can we do in the interim, Hendo?
We launched an initiative last Monday where we gave away we are giving away €1 million of advertising across our newspapers and websites, DMG, Media Shop Ireland. That's given us great insight. Obviously, I just closed it after a few hours because it was oversubscribed. So it was for 200 companies to get $5,000 each. So we've had lots of touch points with lots of different businesses around the country. Necessity is mother of invention, and people who hadn't got websites before are building them fast. People who can't do that are taking telephone orders and getting their sons and daughters to drop product around. So in terms of when it's coming back, when three factors, I believe, right? So it's happening at the moment. So more people moving around as of yesterday, like mum and dad were out for the first time ever, so there's 2 more consumers in the total universe capable of buying something. So the overarching government legislation and the advice from the minister and the departments will dictate that total universe of potential buyers to buy something. While you are trapped at home, and you are certainly, but some companies are doing very well, obviously we won't mention them on this, are doing very well online, so we do still like that shopping experience. There will be a degree of pent up consumer aggression, that's called for want of a better expression, right? So while at the moment, and there are lots of people, so with 1.1 latest call, hopefully that's down below with the changes next week, that'll be down below 1 million people getting some sort of social subsistence at the moment. The expenditure outside of your main overheads, is pretty much been eliminated for most people as well. So there will be cash on hand. Our feelings towards spending that cash and wanting to keep personal rainy day funds will be the psychology in the spending as well, and that goes towards, back to the middlemen. Middlemen do a good job when when a client is big enough to have that middleman aspect to it, and that advice might be in terms of, pitching your wares at a zero cost credit scheme for the new car, for the new house, whatever it happens to be. The other part of that has to be value. I think value from advertisers can always be a great stimulus as well to attract people to buy something that you didn't really want in the first place. It is, some of the basis of consumerism at its very heart. I was fascinated, and I was CNN this great report after Wuhan province opened up, and the cameras followed. I don't know if you saw it, but the cameras followed them into the mega shopping centre, and straight into the Yves Saint Laurent kind of section.
Yes.
And I thought, like, my God, right, what of all the things you've been locked up for 7 weeks, what do you need now? High end, consumables like that you've been missing. So I think those kind of 3 things combined, increase the universe, make people aware of it, ability to buy, places to buy, and the value, and that value being delivered through messaging, which is what we're all here to do, is through advertising messages. Okay,
Siobhan, when are we getting back to normal, or to some sort of normal, or to some sort of something?
Well, if I knew that, Stuart, now I'd be buying the lotto tickets tonight. When is it coming back? I would.
But therefore, you mean it's not in the short term? It's not next week. It's not next month. It's not the month after. So is it as most people are telling me, January 2021?
No.
Do we have to get on a horse and do other things in the meantime?
No, I don't think it's that. I mean, I think come September, I think, as I said to you earlier, everything is on hold, I think, until end of May, early June, until the lockdown. You see restaurants open, cafes opening, and you see hairdressers coming back.
Okay.
I would say then, already though, in fairness, when I'm talking to advertisers on the phone, and I'm still doing my calls every day and all the rest, sentiment is beginning to pick up. Sentiment,
okay.
Surely, what Leo Bradker, DJ Leo Bradker on Friday evening announced a kind of a vision, if you like, that people could latch on to and go, okay, well, that's it. Phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, phase 4. So they can see a roadmap. And once they have a roadmap, that helps, a lot to kind of give them a plan as to where they might be going. I would say come September, I would be confident that you'd see some brands back advertising. Companies still have to advertise. That's the problem. How they advertise, the frequency in which they advertise, the amount of money they spend, that will all change, but they will still have to advertise. And let's come back to what Paul said. It's value for money. It's value, and that is going to come back into the market, which is no bad thing. in a way, and people are going to look for more more transparency as well. I'll come back to what John said about digital, programmatic. This percentage of their money is going into a black hole that we believe.
Just very quickly in a sentence, Siobhan, if that's the case, if you want to add value, and I take Hendel's point earlier on, are there things we can do like sponsorship, rate reductions? Will that stimulate things right now? Native content, new formats.
Yeah, I mean, I think, look, I've been through, not that I'm that old, but, I've gone through Gulf Wars, I've gone through Iraq Wars, I've gone through recessions, I've gone through 2008. And as Paul said, the money does come back, but publishers and broadcasters and media owners, we just have to be savvy, think on our feet.
Okay.
Look at opportunities, take opportunities, create new opportunities. Put to one side everything that you thought you were going to do in 2020. And, I hate that word, we pivot, but look at your business and think, what can we do now? Throw stuff that you had planned, that's gone out the window, and now you're looking at new opportunities. Yes, you're right. Sponsorships, those digital opportunities, to being innovative, just doing a few new things, something new every day, and giving your advertisers more eyeballs, giving them a bit more value for money, being honest, being transparent, and having more conversations.
All right. Jack McGee, when are we back?
I think Q4, realistically, but I qualify that with, by talking to some of the CMOs that over the last few weeks, they're already kind of looking at campaigns now, and they're not spending at the moment, but they're talking about campaigns for Q4. And so I think certainly the last 3 months, and don't forget, Christmas is coming, and the goose may not be getting fat, but certainly people will be spending money around Christmas time, and brands will want to see a good Christmas.
Okay. It's just on 2 p.m. I just shared the poll there. Thank you very much indeed for entering the poll. 2% of you found it wasn't for you, and I'm sorry about that. But such is the way. We do our best here. That's a wrap. And next Wednesday at 1 p.m, you can register again on Eventbrite. We have got Colin O'Reilly, who's as I said, the CEO of Business Post, as it's now called. We also, with fingers crossed, have Margaret Nelson, who's the CEO indeed, of FM104 and Wireless Group. We hope so. She's going to watch and see what she thinks. She's currently sojourning herself down in sunny Baltimore in her residence, AFAO'Meara. But do keep an eye out. We also have actually Mrs. Pat Kiley at some stage with next week or the week after, formerly of Virgin Media, and I know Paul, a former colleague of yours. We have been asked to do these Zoominars for corporates and staff broadcasts too. Absolutely delighted to do it. If you want, do get in touch. I think we can build a community here. And really, that's the important bit, that we start sharing information. We start trying to help each other through this. So do keep an eye out. We'll keep it going. Very grateful to Siobhan, very grateful to Paul, very grateful to Jack, and of course to you. So we'll see you next week. And much like the tradition of clapping when the aeroplane landed in America, we'll all do the traditional wave. Thanks ever so much. Thank you very much, people. Thanks very much, guys, and thanks for watching.
Thanks, sir.
All right.
Thanks, Stu.
See you guys.